A ball is thrown off the top of a tall cliff with an initial velocity of 4 meters per second upwards and with a horizontal velocity of 6 meters per second. The collect air resistance. Vertically, the ball experiences the acceleration due to gravity. Horizontally, the ball is moving at a constant velocity. After some unknown number of seconds, the ball is 62.4 meters below the starting point and 24 meters to the right. What is the ball's direction and speed? So to find the direction and speed, what I'm looking for is the velocity. And I'll make a triangle at the very end showing my vertical and horizontal velocity. So to begin this problem, I'm not going to look at the question so much as how it's set up. I have two accelerations, one vertically and one horizontally. Our rule is for every acceleration we draw a list of givens. So in this case, because I have two accelerations, I'll have two lists of givens, one in the horizontal direction and one in the vertical direction. So our variables for kinematics were Vox TVA, VOX TVA, and I've got my two lists of givens here in vertical and horizontal. So now what I need to do is populate my table with the variables. So if you're following along at this point, you could pause the movie and put in your own variables. So hopefully you've paused and you got your own variables. So let me show you the answers. Upwards, it's going at 4 meters per second, and it is 62.4 meters below the starting height, so that's going to be negative. The acceleration is 9.80 meters per second squared, so when I put it in the math formulas, that will also be negative. Horizontally at 6 meters per second at distance of 24 meters, and I'm looking for Vx. Next step is for finding my Vx and my Vy values. So at this point you can pause and you can actually calculate the Vx and Vy values using kinematics. So hopefully you paused and you found the two values. So to find the vertical final velocity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my givens only in the vertical column to find my vertical velocity. And so in the vertical column, I have the final velocity, I have x, I'm looking for v, and I have a, so I'm going to use v squared equals v naught squared plus 2ax. Putting in my values, I get a positive 4 meters per second because it's going up. I get a negative 9.8 times a negative 62.4, which makes that positive. And I end up with a final answer of 35.2 meters per second. And that's going to be negative because it's going downwards. I can see that from the picture that I've described. Next step, horizontal velocity. So to find the horizontal velocity, I'll use my horizontal givens. And mathematically, it works out like this. And I get 6 meters per second for the final velocity. However, because I know that the horizontal velocity is equal to 0, I really don't need to do any math. Since the acceleration, it's not the horizontal velocity 0, horizontal acceleration is 0. Since the acceleration is 0, there's no change in velocity. Since there's no change in velocity, the final and the initial horizontal velocities will be the same. Okay, moving on to my final part of the answer. I'm going to make a triangle, and my triangle is going to have a horizontal velocity of 6 meters per second and a vertical velocity of 35.2 meters per second. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use trig to find the direction. So that's going to be rise, tangent theta is equal to rise divided by run, inverse tangent of the rise over run, and that's going to be 80.3. If you're using a calculator, the most common problem is people forget to put parentheses after this, and so it finds the inverse tangent of 35.2 and then divides that answer by 6. So make sure you got the parentheses right. From here, I'm going to use Pythagorean's theorem to find out the magnitude of the velocity, which comes out to be 35.7 meters per second. So that's the length of my red arrow up there on the velocity. So these two answers in red are the answer to the velocity for magnitude and direction. If a problem ever asks you to find just the impact speed or just the speed, your answer would just be 35.7 and you wouldn't need to use the trig to find any other parts of the answer.